we have a graphics card that you have never heard of before.
Who's that?
Graphics card.
This is the RX 560 XT. No, I didn't say RX 560 or RX 570, the RX 560 XT, and it's a weird one, but we're gonna benchmark it to see if it actually makes sense for you after a word from today's sponsor. The $68 graphics card from today's video might not be worth it for you, but that should not stop you from checking out today's video sponsor, Jawa.gg, and all the deals they do have on other graphics cards. Jawa is the #1 marketplace where you can buy and sell your PC hardware, from graphics cards to entire PC builds. You can buy or sell on Jawa. If you just recently upgraded from your old graphics card and don't know what to do with your old one, Jawa offers a GPU resale program that gives you an instant offer on your card, helping you get the most value out of your upgrade. Some deals we love right now on Jawa.gg is this GTX 1070 for only $89, or this $549 custom gaming PC build with a GTX 1660 and Ryzen 5 3600. These are just a couple of the great deals available today on Jawa.gg, so you definitely should do some deal hunting yourself by checking the links in the description down below, and also comment down below if you find some really awesome deals on Jawa. I want to hear what you guys find in the comments. Big thanks again to Jawa for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to that GPU benchmark, shall we?
So we picked up this graphics card off of Aliexpress for $68, and yes, we don't know much about this card yet either. That's kind of why we bought it, so that you guys at home don't have to, but this could be a hidden gem, and that's why we need to actually put it in our test bench to see if for 68 bucks it's worth buying.
Let's start out with the RX 560 XT, which, if you want a close comparison to a modern graphics card in terms of raw performance, it performs close to an RX 6400. It does come with 8 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory. It is PCI 3.0 by 16. It has a base clock of 1074 megahertz with a boost clock of 1226 megahertz. And this card did release as a China-only exclusive card back in late 2019, along with the RX 580 2048, which we know and love. And I think this one just is a little late to the party. It's been released all over Aliexpress recently, and they're trying to pick up some steam with sales on it, but when it is priced so closely to that RX 580 2048, does it really come close to being a good option, considering the 580 2048 is, well, a card we know already and the performance is very solid? And as you guys can see over here, there is one HDMI on this graphics card, which having one video out is extremely limiting, especially for us PC gamers who love to hoard monitors. So definitely not a good selling point for this budget GPU. Well, we're gonna talk about our test bench and then dive into some testing to see where it lands. Now, this is a little awkward. Our test bench is built using a bunch of components from Deepcool. What do you guys think we should do about that? Should we build a new test bench? Are you guys cool with us using all this stuff here? Because the parts are really good for testing graphics cards in the future and keeping our setup standardized, but it's a little awkward for us people in the US. So let me know down below for future GPU benchmark videos, but let's go ahead and run the full specs of this system again.
So to go over the parts for the test bench, we have the Ryzen 7 7700X 8-core 16-thread processor. And cooling that CPU, we are using the Deepcool Assassin 4 in white. We have a B650 ROG Strix Gaming Wi-Fi motherboard, 32 gigs of Corsair Vengeance DDR5 at 6000 MHz, a 4TB Lexar Gen 4 NVMe SSD. We're powering this whole system with the PX1200 GWH from Deepcool, and the case is the Deepcool CH560 Digital. So now that we've talked about the test bench, we're going to go ahead and take this RX 560 XT, throw it in, and we're going to test some games on it.
Alright guys, now that we have this very strange graphics card on our test bench, let's go ahead and dive into some games and see why it exists. The games we decided to test are as follows. We have Cyberpunk 2077, we have Forza Horizon 5, Spider-Man Miles Morales, The Finals, Warzone 3.0, and of course, Fortnite. Now first up in Cyberpunk, at low settings, no FSR, we end up getting an average of 43 FPS and a minimum of 35, and again, that is at 1080p by the way. All the tests were done at 1080p, and the performance is kind of what you expect. Considering this graphics card slots in a little bit slower than an RX 570, comes with 8 gigs of VRAM, albeit GDDR5 VRAM. It does perform kind of like how I expect without FSR. Any of the Polaris GPUs from the 570 to 580 and even the 560 nowadays does tend to struggle to get 60 FPS in Cyberpunk, but it is close to playable, especially if you slap on FSR. In this test, it kind of set the expectation of this graphics card. It's just going to be a fine budget GPU, but we'll talk more about that price because I think the price is going to be the biggest problem with it going forward. forward. Now let's dive into Forza Horizon 5, 1080p medium settings, and we got an average of 62 FPS. Again, 60 FPS average, 1080p medium settings in a older AAA title, but one that is still quite demanding. This would be a good point to mention as well with our test bench. The Ryzen 7 7700X is definitely going to help us a little bit in some tests. Honestly, the ideal CPU for a graphics card like this would be something like an older Ryzen 5 3600 from Aliexpress, one of those Xeon combos from Aliexpress. Really anything that has PCI 3.0 by 16, so you can actually get the full bandwidth out of this graphics card, and you should get pretty close to the numbers I'm getting here, because in every game we test, we're seeing that GPU ping at 100%, especially when we're not using FSR. Now let's talk about Spider-Man Miles Morales, 1080p medium settings, no FSR once again. We got an average of about 40 to 50 FPS with some dips into the 30s. I would say it was not a very pleasant gaming experience. It was fine, it did all right, but I can't help but wonder, honestly, buying something like an RX 580 2048 makes a whole lot more sense than this graphics card. But I did do a deep dive, and on AliExpress, these 2048 580s have gotten a little bit more expensive, albeit probably like $5 or $6 more expensive than this graphics card. So yeah, definitely the $5 or $6 more for a 580 2048 will be significantly better than this GPU, which is, again, just makes me wonder. At $68, this card makes no sense to me. If it was maybe $40 or $50, it might make sense, but right now it's still kind of a head scratcher of a graphics card. Now let's play the finals. 1080p, we ran on low settings, and this time we tried FSR on balanced, and we got about 60-ish FPS. Definitely some dips, but FSR was the savior here, getting us up to 80 FPS at times. It does depend on what CPU you get on how effective FSR will actually be. If you go really budget, you might be CPU bottlenecked, and FSR in a game like the finals won't really help you all that much. Well, it's really cool to see that you can play this game regardless of the fact that it doesn't seem to look that great, but it is somewhat playable. Now let's dive into Warzone 3.0, 1080p balance setting, no FSR. I was kind of impressed with this. We got 50 to 60 FPS, but I do think that CPU is carrying us quite a bit here. One of the cool comparisons that I did see in terms of research on this graphics card is it does seem to be pretty close to something like an RX 6400, but without all the Gen 4x4 limitation issues that graphics card has. And I think that's a pretty fair comparison. It's fine for 1080p low medium settings in some games, but it's really not going to be groundbreaking budget GPU, especially at $68 when there are options for a few bucks more, the 580 2048, or on the used market here in the US, picking up something like a 1660 Super, which will blow this card out of the water even with less VRAM. It just, I don't know, I'm struggling to figure out a real value for this graphics card. And last but certainly not least, we had to test Fortnite 1080p performance settings on DX12, which is epic view distance, everything else on low. Got 100 plus FPS with 120 at times. Again, take these numbers with a grain of salt. We like to show you guys Fortnite because, especially with budget GPUs, people like to get into Fortnite with budget graphics cards, but our CPU is definitely carrying us here. But I think if you get something like a Ryzen 5 5600 or Ryzen 5 5500, or go the used AliExpress option of Ryzen 5 3600 or i5 10400 or i3 10100, a lot of options you can go with, you should get very similar results to this. So all in all, the 560 XT is honestly a graphics card I could live without. I think most of you could probably live without as well. It's not very groundbreaking. It does the job. It's not amazing, but in a marketplace where on AliExpress you could spend $5 more and get a 580 2048. And yes, that card's not amazing nowadays, but it's definitely better than this card. It really makes me wonder why these 560 XTs exist to begin with, but you know, we got to test it, we got to learn more about it, a graphics card that no one's talking about, and probably that's for a good reason. So now we finished benchmarking this graphics card, so Jackson back in here to wrap this video up real quick.
Well guys, after testing this card, we found a few caveats. So number one is the performance. It performs actually worse than an RX 570, so it's like in between a 560 and a 570, which you probably could have guessed based on the name of it. And the other problem is it only has one HDMI port on it, or one display out. You may be able to find other variants, but the one that we got, one display out's kind of a deal breaker because you can get a 580 2048 for just a little more money, you get more performance, and those cards usually have 4 display outs on them.
So yeah, this card was maybe what, $45 to $50, maybe $40 would actually be a decent buy, but with the 580 2048 in the market, and it's already been on the market for over a year now, this graphics card really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you do want to shop on AliExpress for a graphics card, check the link in the description down below. We'll leave some more recommendations and they will be affiliate links and they will help us out. Let us know what you think of this 560 XT, and if you heard of this graphics card before, let us know down below, even though I'm not going to believe you. You probably didn't.
And as always, we hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, check out our other 2 YouTube channels and also our twitch.tv/ToastyBros. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.
Now, if you don't want to have to worry about getting any weird graphics cards like this one, you should check out PCBros.tech, but I'm going to give you guys a hint, this probably will be in a PC Bros build, but only once.
Only once, and it's going to be a great price, just like all the other PCs we have at PCBros.tech. Use code Coasty Bros.
Whoa.
I'm making up codes, guys. Toasty Bros 2 on checkout. Save 2% on your next purchase. See you guys later. Goodbye.